Today on the CEO Barbecue, we're looking for copper and gold in BC together with metal energy. For a bullet point summary of this and all other CEO interviews, go to researchtalks.com and subscribe to our free weekly newsletter. Now, this company that you're about to hear from has paid us for the production of this interview. This interview is intended only for experienced speculators because this is venture capital and mining is a very risky industry where failure is the norm and should be the expectation. All conversations are, of course, general and impersonal in nature, and they contain forward-looking statements. I am not a licensed financial advisor, and my business sells content-producing services, which also makes me biased. So before continuing on, please talk to an independent investment advisor with a good long-term track record because your capital is at risk. And please visit setterplus.ca where you'll find the company's official filings. Please understand that there is an additional level of bias with this company specifically because the company's chairman, Stephen Stewart, is a personal friend of mine, as well as an investor in my company. And I am sometimes an investor in some of his companies. And although I don't yet own shares of this specific company, I might own them in the future without a prior warning. If you're not 100% sure that you understand all the disclaimers that I just showed you and told you about, please go to the last section of this video and do not consume this content unless you fully understand and agree with everything said therein. That all said, metal energy has been on the CEO Barbecue before, though a very long time ago and under a different CEO as well. So a lot has changed. And the gist of it is that they've now made copper the center of gravity in the portfolio by proposing to acquire up to 80% of the NIV or the NIV copper gold project in the Tutugan district of, again, British Columbia. NIV is a porphyry target with coincident geochemical and geophysical features, which we'll touch upon later on as well. We'll go a little bit in depth on it with Charlie. This is early stage, though, and the maiden drill program here is targeted for 2026, and it will target the strongest of those anomalies that we'll talk about. The deal itself is new, so it was just announced, and it's still subject to acceptance by the exchange, and so are the deal mechanics. Because it's a related party transaction, and it's also classified as a reviewable acquisition. So we'll talk about that too. But essentially, there's $300,000 that need to be paid on acceptance by the TSX-V. And $300,000 worth of shares need to be paid out by the end of December this year, with the vendor being able to go for cash or shares again in 2027 and 2030. To earn that 80%, though, Metal Energy also has to fund $20 million of exploration by the end of 2030. So that's 5 years total, but it is staged. So staged as $2.5 million per year for the first 4 years, and then a heavier $10 million spend in 2030. Again, new management here, though. So we have Charlie Gregg stepping in as CEO, and he's going to be joined by his son, Dr. Roy Gregg, as well as Alex Walcott. They're stepping in as technical advisors. Now, Charlie and Alex have worked on this asset themselves before that for about a decade now. So that's where that connection comes from. And Charlie, of course, is part of the brains behind the American Eagle copper discovery in the Babine Lake area, also in BC, but kind of central BC in that case. I'm really only scratching the surface here in this overview, but of course I'll be asking about all of these things and deal mechanics and the geology and the risks and potential conflicts of interest or whatever else may have you later on. This is the CEO Barbecue after all. Metal Energy is listed as MERG, so that's MERG on the TSX Ventures Exchange, where the average 3-month volume is about 95,000 shares. But after the deal's being announced, volume has spiked. And so the 10-day average volume is now about 400,000 shares. With a market cap of $13 million and just over 28 million shares outstanding, today this is a 46-cent stock with a 52-week high of 52 cents and a 52-week low of 7.5 cents. The 50 and the 200-day moving averages are at respectively 17 and 14 cents, which again, after this news, means that the stock is trading well above both of them and thus indicating positive upward momentum. And this is where it normally start going over the company's financials. But again, since Merge has been just being restructured really and refocused, looking back at their financials from 4 months ago might not make too much sense. But I'll be asking more about that later on in the conversation as well. It doesn't mean, though, that people watching or listening shouldn't read the financials. They should. And of course, those can be found on setterplus.ca. Now, for this to actually become a conversation, I'll have to shut up already. And gentlemen, I'll let you do the talking. But first of all, thank you both for being here today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Great to be here, Antonio. Good to see you.
Pleasure is mine. And Stephen, I'm hoping you're saving on electricity costs. So that's why your camera is kind of dark, or maybe you're on the road. But I am happy to have both of you.
I like to be interviewed in low light. Yeah, when you have a hairline like this, don't want to advertise it. And yes, I am in Quebec here, and actually in Montreal to be more specific, at the Explore conference.
Well, good. We'll touch upon conferences and stuff like that later on as well for merge. But Charlie, actually, want to kick it off with you. This is you and I have known each other for some time, but this is your first time on the CEO barbecue officially, I guess. So I'll have to go through the smell test first, which intends to understand more about what the incentives and the track record of management are. Starting off with yourself and your track record. Who are you, and have you made more money for shareholders than what you've spent during your career so far?
Uh, yeah, I would say I probably have. I mean, mostly I've been working, for others. And this is my first kick at the cat when it comes to being a CEO. But yeah, I'm my career really has spanned all the way from soil sampling, which is how I got into the business, and then eventually, once I got some skills behind me, I've really been a geologic mapper for a lot of my career, and making geologic maps for various companies, more or less worldwide. But yeah, and then more recently started staking some properties as a sort of a sideline, and trying to make a living, putting bread on the table, and from that, this kind of thing came about, and been involved with a few juniors, as either as a consultant or optioning properties, and then more recently, being involved in forming them. And one of those is Evergold, which is still around and still it's struggling a little bit right now, but we're going to revitalize that one. And another one that did make quite a bit of money for shareholders was GT Gold, and formed that with Kevin Keogh, and that one kind of went all the way when it was taken out by Newmont.
When I met you in the Babine Lake area this year, you also told me you got a new knee. So I thought maybe you just got motivated by the new knee, and you're like, I'm going to step up. I'm going to take the CEO role now.
Yeah, maybe that was just trying to prove that I still had it. It can still walk or limp anyway. No, it's doing well, thanks. Yeah.
I have you on video carrying core boxes, so you can definitely move. You do also have other positions though, and I know you consult with other companies. Again, American Eagle is one of those. How much of your time are you going to be able to dedicate to merge now?
Well, I mean, Air American Eagle is well on its way, and we got a good crew working there. They're very familiar with the rocks, and I'll still be involved, but a little less involved. And yeah, this one is definitely the main gig. As you mentioned, Alex Walcott is involved, and Alex and I have been working away and funding all the work by ourselves on this property, for about 10 years. So this is definitely our baby, definitely our focus. And the reason for that is because it just kept getting better and better. And, it's turned into an excellent target. And, we sort of shopped it around for a while, and finally we found a partner that, works for us. It's, not, not working for us, but, who we felt would be the right partner, with the OR group.
How much money would you say you've put into the property? Because you said you financed it yourselves. How much money over the whole 10 years would you have put into it?
Out of pocket, about $500,000.
Okay.
If you included the time that Alex and I have put into it, out of our in-kind kind of work, quite a bit more than that. I would say, I don't know what that number would be exactly, but it'd be a lot.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
So.
really what I'm wondering here is in terms of deal mechanics, who's getting what, who's put in what, essentially trying to figure out how that deal came down. And then I guess Stephen, you can tune in here as well. But what is deal mechanics? What does that look like? I mean, if assuming that the deal goes through, how many shares of Metal Energy is Charles going to get, or what is that going to look like?
I'm going to step in before he has a chance to say anything.
Okay.
This kind of thing at the stage in my career, and I think similarly for Alex is, what we're interested in is discovery. That's what you really get the reward for. And, it's also by far the most fun part of the business. So, what Alex and I are hoping to get out of it fairly early on with the initial payment and the initial payment in shares is more or less, what we put into it out of pocket. And the rest of it, we're willing to bet on ourselves. We like this property a lot. I mean, it has all the elements, of a porphyry copper gold system. And, we don't really see a lot of better anomalies out there. And Alex and I have done a lot of work of this kind in one form or another. He's a geophysicist. He's done a lot of the geophysics on a lot of properties in BC, really knows his stuff. His father is a geophysicist, so he's worked with his dad since, time immemorial almost. And I've been around for a long time too and seen some very, very good things. And this is a very nice looking coincident anomaly. Perfect target. So all we're really interested in is success if the company has success. I don't know what we'll end up with, but, if this went all the way, of course, we do very, very well. But again, all we're really interested in is getting our money back out, and then we bet on ourselves. And yes, Metal Energy has to raise quite a bit of money and has to spend quite a bit of money to go all the way. But there's really no payments if there isn't any success. And if there is success, then the payments will be there. But they won't, and they'll easily be able to finance the whole thing if what's there is what we think is there or what could be there. Again, it's boots on the ground in the drill bit, and we're at the drill bit stage now, and that is the truth machine, and we'll find out.
Well, and it's what I'm really looking for here is incentive. I mean, how many shares are you going to get off the bat, or are you going to be buying in some shares as well, and just trying to figure out how aligned you would be with shareholders here?
Well, let me take a shot at that from my perspective. Sure. I mean, I think, as Charlie said, the deal is structured that he's getting he and Alex's hard cash out of pocket spent over the past 10 years. Half of that's going to be in cash. You referenced the 300,000, and half of that's going to be converted into shares. I think we got a sweet deal here. I think we both got a sweet deal. But look, from Metal Energy's perspective, that's hard cash. You try and hire guys like Alex and Charlie, and you pay them their time, which Charlie said he just didn't calculate his time. We're getting a lot of value here. So he's effectively reinvesting his hard cash, his time and energy back into Metal Energy, and it's our responsibility to raise the bulk of the money going forward, all of the money going forward, in order to earn our 80%. And you reference it's a 5-year deal. The money's going into the ground, right? So it's $20 million over 5 years, but the real balloon payment, if you will, is $10 million, and that's not till 2030. Mm-hmm. So we have the next 4 years. We'll have budgets equaling exactly $2.5 million per year. We may choose to accelerate that for whatever reasons, obviously based on success. But the thesis is, look, we're going to, if this isn't what we hope it is in 2 years' time, I mean, I'm not so sure it'll be what we want on year 3 and year 4. I mean, we have that, again, it's an option. So look, we're going to go out there and test this thing thoroughly. That was what Charlie was looking for in a partner, and we agree. You got to go out there and give a good shot at this, and we'll do that in 2026. And I think I'm not going to say we're going to know if it's game on or not, but I think we're going to gather a lot of information there. So this option deal is back-ended, easily financeable if it is what we hope it is. If we have the success that we've had with American Eagle, or of course GT Gold, or even reference what Charlie's son recently did with AMark. I mean, he was the vice president of exploration for Joy, a huge discovery. I mean, look at that deal that they have with Freeport. Orders of magnitude more cumbersome. So I think, we've got a clear path to 80% of what we see as the most interesting and compelling geophysical target in British Columbia in terms of copper, gold, and you didn't mention molybdenum. We've got 3 really nice trends there that overlay nicely with the geophysics. Any geologist I speak to, and I've been chasing Charlie, and I say I mean both Tony and I, who developed a great relationship with Charlie and his crew for for a number of years. We have been trying to convince them to partner with us for some time. So we're quite excited about it. And I think the timing is right with the market, notwithstanding the last 10 days, having some vigor back into it. And I'll also mention that this is fully permitted. Okay, so this is ready to go, which is important. In somewhere like British Columbia, where permitting can be delayed. So we've got that under our belt, got a clear plan in place. We know where we want to drill. This is very financeable. Again, like we did our research, talked to a lot of arm's length geologists, and the consensus is clear: drill it. So that's what we're going to do.
We'll definitely get to some of these things there, Stephen, that you're mentioning. But just going back to sort of skin in the game here for a moment, where's if the deal closes, where's is insider ownership going to be?
Very high when you consider me. I mean, I have approximately 19.9% of the company today, but that's not only me. That includes ORCAP's position. So I personally have quite a bit of skin in this game. I've been buying shares of the past little while. Like, look, when I say a little while, going back probably 12, 18 months. So I built my position to the max. When you include ORCAP, who has about 4%, if I recall correctly. I can't obviously go over the 19.9 without fully bidding for the company. So I'm at a max. I will participate in if and when we do a private placement. When I say if, obviously, Metal Energy will have a private placement against. I will write a check. I've been writing lots of checks into the org group companies lately. So I'm almost broke in terms of cash. No, I'm just kidding. But look, I do put my money where my mouth is. I'm highly motivated with Metal Energy, not just from an equity standpoint, but look, Metal Energy has been around for a few years now. Started off with a nickel company. We raised money at 20 and 24 cents. We spent $7 million in the Thompson, drilling out the Manabridge nickel mine. I think it was technical success, but a victim of timing. Boy, the nickel market just fell out of bed. So I was actually very pleased and proud of the results we delivered, but it didn't matter what you did in a collapsing nickel market. And then most recently, about a year and a half ago, we pivoted towards copper because I have a thesis on copper and gold and porphyries in British Columbia, and we can get into that if you care. But the thesis is get exposure to more of them, because I think that's where I think porphyries are where the future of copper and gold are coming from. So I want to get in front of that wave. And so we acquired a very large piece of ground in the Highland Valley area. We totally straddle Teck's Highland Valley deposit, or mine, I should say. It's the largest copper mine in Canada. Charlie's very familiar. In fact, Charlie had been consulting, Charlie and his son and Alex, all sort of part of the same team here. Like we've sort of part of the family. We're putting the band back together here for Metal Energy, but they know that ground well. It's a wonderful ground, but speaking to permitting in BC, we've had trouble permitting that, and hence haven't really been able to make hay there yet, as much as we really, really like the rocks. It's not just a closology play. There's work to be done, and it starts with the drill bit. Whereas, I juxtapose that with NIV. Whereas I would say actually a lot more work has been done, certainly on the geophysics, geochem aspect, mapping, etc. The data package that Charlie, Alex, and his team have compiled over the past 10 years is phenomenal. It's coherent. And it's coincident, which is important when you're targeting. So, and then of course it's permitted. So, at this point in time, there's not much left to do other than poke some holes in this and test our thesis and keep our fingers crossed.
And again, we'll be back to some of these things here. I'll keep going or asking really about incentive here in the first part, or in the smell test. Talking about, you said, you mentioned Alex and Charlie, they're not cheap, essentially. What are you guys taking salaries? They're going to be a bonus, shares, options. What is that package going to look like for the two?
Well, for them, so like they're the vendors, right? So like they're the vendors, so they're incented in that way. We will be issuing options. We haven't done that yet, but look, they're going to make money off what I think Charlie said was like discovery. And I pair that back to what me and the org group are really all about. I mean, we're all about a lot of things, but I mean, I think the core fundamental thing we ask ourselves is this going to be a mine? Can we deliver a mine to the market? That's where it all begins. It's not to say that I don't like the money that comes along with that. But if you keep to that mantra, the money will follow. Mm-hmm. But we think we have the opportunity to make a discovery and ultimately find an ore body. That's what it's all about. So really, I mean, that's what I want to do. I want to deliver a mine. I know Charlie wants to make a discovery. Same with Alex. He's made a couple. I think we got a couple mines in the ore group already. But we want more, and then the money and the incentives will follow. We're as I said, I've got a big shareholder position in there. Charlie is just new to the metal energy game, but obviously as the option ore has as much to gain as anybody outside of metal energy. So look, we love our options. We love our skin in the game, but really it's about a discovery. Mm-hmm. Fun. And look, Charlie will tell you, look, so sorry to interrupt you, Antonio, but look, I think Charlie's comfortable. He doesn't need to do this, but he loves it.
Are the vendors going to keep a royalty on the projects or anything else that any kind of ownership of the project itself or something like that?
It's a totally standard operating procedure option agreement where it's cash, shares, and they'll retain a royalty. The company can buy back everything except for 1% on the royalty front. And who are the beneficiaries? It's Alex and Charlie.
So is that's something that I always ask? I mean, do you personally own a royalty on the projects? That's something that could be a potential conflict of interest. Is it viable, or what's the value of that royalty?
There's a 3% NSR of which we can buy back everything except for 1%, which is in Charlie's and Alex's control. And so, sure, they can transact, but nobody can force them to at a fixed price. The other 2%, I forgot exactly what they are. They're not inexpensive. So I don't know what they are exactly, but the company can buy those back at a fixed schedule.
So, how do you manage that? I mean, is there going to be a committee in terms of, I suppose, the decisions that are being taken, or how do I know that again, Charlie and the vendors will act in the interest of shareholders as opposed to in the interest of the royalty holders, which can be the same thing, but is not always the same thing. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, fair question. I don't see the conflict as much as some others do. Obviously, first of all, me as the chairman of the company. Have no exposure to that royalty. So, and any decisions on the royalty would be done by the board if, as, and when, and that sort of veers down the road, of course. But, I understand, the question. Charlie would obviously recuse himself from any this decision whatsoever. That would be clear. But I think, look, if this is a discovery, you buy the royalty out. I mean, it's obvious. If it's not a discovery, don't worry about it.
Yeah. And then Charlie, I don't know. I know you've done other deals like that. How have you dealt with that before? Have you kept the royalty before, and then an involvement in the company as well? And how have you dealt with that before?
Well, with GT Gold, I never had a royalty. I wasn't the underlying rights holder. And I was VPX of that. And then with Evergold, I'm an officer, but, we haven't had the success. So that's never come to that. And I think most of the properties in Evergold are my properties as well. And I think I maintain or retain a 0.5% royalty on those properties. But, none of them have had to really deal with that. We haven't made an amazing discovery on any of them, so haven't really had to deal with the whole royalty thing. It's not very common where the royalty becomes a big issue. That's what we're all aiming for, but it doesn't happen that often that you discover something that is going to become a mine. Yeah, it can be fantastic, but it's pretty rare too.
Well, I think in the end, it's also partly about checks and balances, essentially. And I know you'll be back on the barbecue as the process goes on. So I'll make a note to keep you to that point. And I know we'll talk about what you potentially think you can discover here later on. But I do want to move on and talk about the assets here. But just before we do that, maybe we can talk a little bit about the share structure, because you did a rollback Stephen, actually, right before Charlie got involved, what's the situation now? Again, 28.3 million shares outstanding. What about the rest? I mean, warrants and options. What does the fully diluted look like?
Fully diluted, everything got rolled back 5-1. That includes all of the options. I think the company does have a rolling 10-month plan, which is fairly standard, if I recall correctly. Not anywhere near that 10% is fully allocated. I'd have to look that up. My apologies. I should know. You can call me out on that one. But like there's not a whole. I'm going to guess. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But maybe there's 5% of the options outstanding. That's a wild guess at this point in time.
Right.
But look, yeah, as you indicated, we had 150 some odd million shares. We rolled it back. We're sub 30 million shares outstanding now. We have $650,000 in the bank. About $100,000 of that is flow through. The rest is hard dollars. When the time is right, we will go back to market and raise money. The time's not right today. I think right now what we're doing is we're in the process of educating the market on what metal energy and more specifically what NIV is. It's very compelling. It has woken up metal energy fantastically, which is exciting. I love to see it. It has been, I hate to say it, a dog. Look, just call it like it is. Metal energy has been a dog for me. And I have been highly motivated. As much as I am for discovery, I'm highly motivated to turn it around. Mm-hmm. And that's important to me and my reputation. And I don't feel, I make no apologies, don't get me wrong. And I'm not, it's not that I don't feel bad. I'm in the exploration business. As you say, I've heard you say on your podcast, which I watch a lot, failure is the norm or to be expected. And we have yet to have our fleeting moment of success. And that's okay. As long as you say you say what you're going to do and you do it. And if Mother Nature doesn't cooperate, well, that's okay. You know what? I found that if you do that, you can go back to the investors, same people that lost, all of their money. And as long as you have a real plan with real asset, real people, and they know you're going to reallocate the capital intelligently and put it into the ground as much as you can, they'll give you that bet. And especially when the market's turning, right? I don't want to say now is the time. I mean, it's probably not, to make early stage investment. You should have been placing your bets 12 months ago, ladies and gentlemen, before everything, when the TSX was 500, not 1,000. But look, I still think we've got an opportunity to grow. I do think the market's going to pull back. It looks like we can see things cooling from a superheated period, which is totally normal, totally healthy. I mean, nothing goes up in a straight line. But look, when you look at our market cap, which has gone from nobody cared about metal energy to I think smart money is starting to care about metal energy once they learn about what Charlie's project is, and the fact that Charlie is taken, as he said, first kick at the cat or whatever it was. Charlie is going to be the CEO first time. Technically, he and his group are as good as it gets in British Columbia, and I deal with a lot of folk. And not only are they strong technically, and the sort of the young group that Charlie has built around him, really impressive. Everybody, but of course, us in the OR group, and that's me, and Tony has been my partner on this, and Tony's got the primary relationship with Charlie, and our ability. Clearly, we have shown the ability to raise money from retail, raise money from the institutions. And then, of course, we've been very successful in attracting investment from the major mining companies, which is not easy. It took me 10 years of my career of scraping and clawing and begging for the majors to pay attention until they started to do. And our group has done deals with Newmont, South 32, Agnico, Teck, and many, many others. And why they do that is because we run a tight ship. We have good projects. We have good people. We act responsibly. We have skin in the game. And we have good databases. That's something that you should ask Charlie about. Charlie is constantly about the science. He always wants to spend more money on the science and the database and the preparation, because his view is, and he's dealt with majors. Look, he had a big exit with GT Gold, and he always told me it's because of the database. We had all the underlying work. We had it all well organized. We spent a lot of money on the off season getting it organized. So when you hand it over to the Newmonts of the world, they see what you see, and they have a professional, well organized database founded in geotechnical science, and it makes it look like you know what you're doing. So to sum up my rant here, I mean, it's a marriage. We're putting the band back together, and it's a strong technical team in British Columbia, and a strong capital markets team in Toronto, looking to make a discovery on NIV.
I think failure is enormous should be the expectation is a term that I think I stole from you actually 2 years ago, or someone. I did steal it from someone. It's not something I came.
Well, I thought you sounded really smart when you said it. So
I'm literally 2 brain cells away from being a monkey at this point, so I can use all the help that I can get. But I do want to move on and talk about the asset here. And first of all, I'm even curious why Metal Energy was even able to make that deal in the first place, given that again, it's a Toodoggone region and it's been extremely popular here the last, call it, 2 years, maybe a little longer than that. But again, if NIV is as good as you believe it to be, why hasn't someone drilled it yet? Why didn't anybody, make a deal with Charlie before you were able to? And I'm not sure who of the two is best suited to answer this, but whoever feels obliged.
Well, it's at the southern end of the Toodoggone. Some people might even say it's just, out of the Toodoggone, but it's very close. There's some intervening younger rocks, which means that the rocks that host the goodies in the Toodoggone are not actually, contiguous with the rocks that host the goodies in at NIV and the surrounding area. But it is very close. And why have people not made that connection? Well, no porphyry copper gold mineralization was intersected there in drilling. In fact, there was really essentially no drilling, on East or on NIV and the surrounding ground, which is called East NIV, until like 2020 or so. So, it was just overlooked. It's not an obvious porphyry sticking out of the ground. You might be just above it, but it's not been explored as a porphyry occurrence ever, really. And the nearest one is maybe Copper Ridge's RDP property to the south, and that wasn't really for a long time looked at that as a porphyry. There's a nice nearby a deposit of kind of native copper, but not porphyries right next door.
How far away are you from infrastructure relative to the other deposits, or relative to the other projects in the Toodoggone?
Well, you're 40 kilometers as the crow flies from the Chemes deposit, which is not a deposit; it's a mine. It's mined out. The mine is closed. Much of the infrastructure's there. There's a couple of other deposits immediately to the north, that are a little deeper that Centerra has. So Centerra still has that property. There's a power line right up to, where the mine was, and a road. We're 17 kilometers, I think, from, as the crow flies, from the road, more like 22 down a nice broad valley to get to the Amanika mining access road, which is put into to access the Chemes deposit. So pretty darn close, and pretty, a pretty easy or easily workable solution to get into NIV with road access should you find something. But right now it's heli access. So we'll do the drilling with the helicopter support.
You do call it, Charlie, the best untested porphyry target in BC, which is, it's obviously quite a claim, and it leans on, well, obviously on the promotional side, I suppose, but which I suppose you as a geo, I don't imagine are too big of a fan of it in the first place, but maybe you can put some specifics to that claim for me. What is the best untested porphyry target in BC even mean? How do you determine that that's the case?
Well, I mean, this property, which was larger initially, Alex first staked it, and that was probably in 2010, I guess, so 15 years ago. And it was larger. And, once we became partners, roughly 10 years ago, maybe a bit more, we actually ended up dropping part of it. And then we were eventually surrounded by some other claims, initially in a company called Serengeti, and then in a company called Northwest Copper. So they have what they call East Niv property, which basically surrounds us. But we've got the core, we got the crown jewel, we feel. And what makes it the best untested porphyry copper gold target? Well, the Northwest Copper people, Serengeti, they actually tested their ground right across the valley to the east from us, and found porphyry copper mineralization and a pretty good intercept, and a number of intercepts that were not as good, but they definitely proved the thesis that there's porphyry copper gold mineralization in the very immediate area, so very close to our ground. But when you look at the geochemistry of their ground and our ground, and other porphyry targets, an example is GT Gold. Another example would be Amark's Aurora discovery, not far north. Ours has equivalent or better surface geochemistry, and by that I mean, soil and talus fines geochemistry, some rock geochemistry, but mainly the soils and talus fines. And it has a long anomaly. It's the same, similar scale to both of those discoveries, but just as good a tenor in terms of the grade of the soil geochem samples that you get back, or talus fine geochem samples that you get back. So there's this nice long trend. It's pushing 4 kilometers from one end of the claims to the other. It's broad, hundreds of meters wide, and it has multi-elements. So there's, copper, really good gold, and there's moly, and they're all coincident. So you got this nice coincident geochemistry, in the proper geological setting. So they're upper Triassic rocks with a number of intrusions coming into them. They're nicely altered. There's veining around that you can get good grades out of. And you're not right on a quartz stockwork that everybody wants to see with a porphyry copper. Well, where do you really want that stuff? You want it immediately below you, so it's all still there. So, the alteration, the geologic setting, etc., perfect, and it's coincident with the geochemistry. And then the ringer is, how does it look when you look at the geophysics? What does it look like from that perspective? And all of those geophysical elements, and we've done a lot of them. We've done some shallow looking IP. We've done deeper looking IP that's about as deep as you can look with IP. We've done airborne MT, the regional mag that was done, and the mag that was done early on in the exploration of the property, all just sits right on top of the geochemistry. So that's the whole coincidence kind of element. All the parameters are coincident, and then I'm working with this guy, Alex Walcott, who's worked on a lot of properties, not just in BC, but mainly in BC, BC and the Yukon, but he's worked up, in the Arctic. He's worked a lot in the States, a little bit overseas. And so have I. And when we look at this thing, we compare it to what we've worked on, and, it looks just as good as anything we've seen. We don't know what's down there. There's only one way to find out, but, why would we put up our own bucks to continue moving this thing ahead year after year? Because it looks good. And, really most of that work is done in the last 5 years. Once, our neighbors came in and recognized that this is pretty good. And, both of us were quite busy with our consulting practices and our contracting businesses. And also I was pretty busy with GT Gold and didn't really notice that things were moving along with the neighbors. And then, once they discovered something, it's like, holy smokes, this is pretty good. And they wanted our ground, they asked about it, but, they didn't pressure us in any way. And, when we were, like I say, distracted. So, never bid on anything, never had a concrete offer. and then once we put the whole thesis together, yeah, we had a few parties interested, definitely some good ones, and we considered them seriously. And we used some of those offers to work a better deal out of our group partners too. But
Oh man, Charlie.
yeah, but they came out as top, as the top guys, and mainly. It wasn't because we could work an amazing deal. It was more about, who your partners are. And we have worked with your group through American Eagle for the last 4 years and on the NAC project, which is a great project, but they've been really good guys to work with. And then we worked a little bit for Metal Energy actually on the Highland Valley project for them.
Mhm.
It's been good. And that's what you want to do. You want to be, is a good team. It's important in this business to be aligned.
Listening to you speak, one might think that you like talking about rocks. I've actually tried to, just looking at this after you announced the deal, trying to dumb it down for myself, and it was not an easy task, but I think I'm getting a handle of it. It's essentially magnetics, IP, and soils that you say are overlapping, giving you a porphyry target. When you talk about overlapping, and you said it's deep IP, do they overlap spatially, like in 3D, or is it just on surface?
Well, I mean, the soil geochem stuff is just on
Yeah.
surface, but the geologic framework that you map out with the mapping, and we've had some pretty capable folks do some of the mapping. I wouldn't say it's 100% complete, and they are pretty young folks. I've done some of it, stumbling around out there as I rehab my knee, or maybe I hadn't had the knee operation, I guess, but some pretty capable guys walking the ground, and that includes Roy and a few others. And that framework really tells you that they are coincident, that yes, you can project that geology to depth, because what you see in the geology at surface, you also get a sense from the geophysics what the response is of those surface features. And yeah, you have to kind of model it and infer that those things go to depth. But that's what the geophysics is for. I mean, it gives you that response where the chargeability is related to mainly sulfides. So you've got nice chargeability, and at surface, that's where the gold and the copper is in the sulfides that you see in rocks at surface, or in the geochemistry where those rocks have weathered and released the precious and base metals into the soil. So
Mhm.
everything fits nicely.
What kind of a porphyry even looking for here? I mean, Chemessa, I suppose, would be a comp for you, but is that like what would you call it? A transitional porphyry? Is it I don't know, semi-alkalic? What is it?
I would say, I don't know how much of the details I really know about Chemess, but I would say it's a high K calc alkaline porphyry. So kind of not a lot of free quartz, but some. It's not an alkalic porphyry. And I would say ours is probably pretty similar. Ours is a little bit older. We've done some age, geochronology, age dating of the intrusive rocks and of the host rocks to some degree. And this thing comes out, roughly 222, which is late Triassic. And, the only other porphyry that has that age is Shaft Creek, which is in the Golden Triangle. That's a Teck deposit. But they're similar host rocks, and that's a very similar age. Shaft Creek, I think, is 222, and it's amongst the oldest porphyry copper gold deposits in the Golden Triangle.
Mhm.
And those rocks are broadly similar. We're on the east side of the Bowser Basin, which is a younger assemblage of sedimentary rocks. Golden Triangles on the west side, but they're basically the same rock, same age, probably same tectonic assemblage, and same geodynamic setting when they were emplaced and erupted.
Is it a similar mineral assemblage, or what confirms that potassic core essentially for you?
Yeah, I would say a similar intrusives in terms of age, but also in terms of composition. And the high K, doesn't mean like they're 90% potassium. It's still, maybe it's 4 or 9% up to 9%, something. So not, there's potassium there, but potassium feldspar is one of the major, framework minerals of any rock, really.
Really, why I'm asking these things is obviously because I want to appear smarter on camera than I really am, but also because I'm trying to figure out what you're going to be looking for in core at first. Obviously, you want economic mineralization in the first hole. That's not as Rick Roll likes to say, the market doesn't really care about what you want. So what's kind of the bare minimum of what you want to see in core here?
I guess, one of my expectations really, I would expect to and hope to see, a lot of sulfides, copper-bearing sulfides, because I think the gold will run with those, and veining. So we're going to be looking at kind of combined, resistivity, chargeability kind of expression at depth and targeting that probably among, beneath the this very large and high tenor gold anomaly that we have in the north. But, it could be something where part of it is a little bit more gold rich and it's more of a gold deposit than a copper gold deposit. I mean, when you look at the geochemistry, it kind of looks that way from surface, but maybe that's just because you're higher in the system and as you go lower, you've got, more copper. Only one way to find out. But that's kind of what I'm going to be looking for. I expect that we will hit some kind of a system, how strong it is and how big it is. You're only going to find it out one way, and then it's 4 kilometers long. So this is one of the reasons that when we were looking for an option partner, we were looking at someone that could bring some, like you don't go in there with $200,000 in a Winky drill to drill, 5 meters deep. With one tent and, and a 2 burner stove and a cup of coffee, you got to go in there with a drill rig that can drill, hundreds of meters and you want to go in there and, what Alex and I thought would be nice would be pushing 10,000 meters in the first year. Well, we were quite happy to settle for 5 or 6,000 meters and, probably 10 holes because you don't know where along those coincident anomalies the real goods are going to be hiding at depth. You're hoping you're going to hit it in the first hole and you probably drill under the best gold geochem anomaly that's coincident with chargeability, and that's probably where we'll start. But it maybe if it's there, it's 2 kilometers south of that, but it's just way better at depth in that area. So only one way to do that, and that's to space out the holes and test a number of the anomalies, and I think that's how we'll approach it. And of course, if we hit it in the first one, we'd probably drill one right next to it too, right? So who knows?
You're going for 1,000-meter drill holes though off the bat?
No, I think that's too deep. I think you'd start with an angle hole drilling to the southwest across the anomaly, because it's a northwest, north-northwest trending coincident anomaly. You'd probably drill across it from east to west and toward what looks like a structure out on the west side, and maybe it's more like 500 or 600 meters max, I would say, per hole.
What are the drilling costs like in this part of BC?
Well, we know when you're drilling with helicopter support, you are looking at plus 600 a meter all in. That's in geology, camp, everything. So and it's probably significantly higher than that, depending on who you're contracting with and the helicopter costs, etc. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to the point of that geochem anomaly, what's the topography there? And why I'm asking is because I'm thinking how transported could it be, and could it really even be transported given the size of it?
Oh, sure. I don't think there's a lot of glacial till or anything. There's quite a bit of outcrop on the steeper slopes, and even on some of the gentler slopes, there's a bit of outcrop. But yeah, there's certainly, that's why I say talus fines. So, those are shed off of the steeper slopes, and it'd be the fine material mixture of soil and then little pieces of rock. So, yeah, there's a little bit of transport gravitationally on some of the steeper slopes, but a lot of the other more gently sloping surfaces, it's probably pretty close to being in place. I'm not too worried about a lot of transport. And it's quite different than NAC, which has quite a bit more glacial till, and the glaciers have smeared out, the material on top. So there is soil geochem anomalies. You just don't know exactly, how far down glacier, down ice those anomalies are. So it's a little more difficult to use there. But here, there's really no ice there. I don't think there was a tremendous amount of ice there. It's relatively dry. I mean, obviously it's cold, but and certainly gets a lot of snow. But there's not a lot of permanent ice right on the property. And the topography is, yeah, locally, you could hurl yourself off something and probably kill yourself. But there's not too many slopes like that. I mean, that's only going to happen if we miss in all the 10 holes, right? And that'll be me. I'm just kidding. I probably won't do that, but
Probably.
yeah.
That's yeah, that gives me confidence. What are you what are you yeah, what are you targeting in terms of our grade and tonnage? I suppose super early to say, but if it works out, if the thesis that you're giving me here, if it works out, and again that's forward looking, but how big of a deposit can reasonably be expected here, and what kind of grades are you thinking?
Well, I mean, you just have to look at comparable things, and Aurora is got some great numbers and great thicknesses, and so did Camas, and so did Shaft Creek, and they vary quite a bit. Yeah, where you're looking at this thing, it's got to be, something maybe not very big. If it's very gold rich, perfect. But if you're looking for, copper gold, you're looking for bulk tonnage. So you're looking for something large, and all of those deposits, that I mentioned are emerging deposits in the case of Aurora. They're big, and they're variable grade. Shaft isn't, amazing grade, but it turned out to have more gold in it than people thought. And, it's got a lot of value overall because it's very, very big. Um, so, there's a real range there, but yeah, we would be looking for, something that's comparable to one of those things. And I think, it's important to keep in mind that those deposits, physically, are not as large as you think. When you look at a mine and all the infrastructure around it, the waste dumps, the tailings impoundment facility, where the mill is and all the roads, et cetera, water treatment things, they look huge, but the actual deposit is not as big as people think. It's pretty concentrated, and they're harder to find than you think, and they're smaller than you would generally think. And they might have a big footprint geochemically and alteration wise, where it doesn't quite make the grade, but the actual part of it that makes a grade, not as big as you think. And I think we found that out with GT Gold. And then in that case, that one went down, it was pretty steeply plunging kind of body. It's not been, I don't think it's even been completely drilled off, but they're not as don't have as physically large a surface expression than some people think.
Stephen, you mentioned permitted, and you mentioned in the news release, well, fully permitted. That's from a government perspective. What's the First Nations situation there? How many groups are you dealing with? What's the relationship with the First Nations?
Well, Charlie's the better, certainly better to answer the First Nations.
Yeah, there's three groups that overlap kind of at the margins of their territory, because they're reaching quite far north. And there's Takla, there's Seke, and then the Gitsan too, and even the Taltan, kind of come over that way. So just preliminary. I know some of them. We haven't done a lot of that, but we are just consummated the deal. So we're jumping into that, but we know some of the people there, and I'm sure we'll sort it out here very shortly.
You've got time to deal with that too, I assume, because this is more into the interior of BC than the Golden Triangle. So I assume it gets really, really cold, as you said. They're icy as well. So it's seasonal exploration, is what I'm trying to say. So you're going to be,
Yeah.
drilling what, June, July?
Yeah, we'd be drilling this summer. Yeah, and I think that's right. It's definitely a seasonal kind of thing for now. When you're in steep slopes, it's tough to work in winter. So yeah, that's definitely the way we'd approach it.
I spent some time in the Golden Triangle this summer myself, and I thought it was tough to work in the summer as well. I mean, it's incredibly steep, and like when you look at the ground crew that's been doing soils for 3 days in the bush, and you see them coming back, and they look only half alive. So it's not. I mean, it's not easy terrain to work. But just going back to timing here, essentially, you're going to be drilling in the summer. Essentially, you're saying between now and you giving me an answer to the question, like, is this worth continuing on? It's what, 10, 12 months from now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we're gonna tee up all the drilling kind of come midsummer. We got some partners in mind that might help us with the relationships with First Nations to some degree, from past relationships and past programs that we've run. You have to remember too when you're looking at the First Nation side of it. This is a permitted program, so that had to be vetted in that process as well. That's something to always keep in mind. But yeah, it's not going to, we're not going to produce results right away. Obviously, we've done work over the years, little bits and pieces, some of it kind of last minute. Some of it when an opportunity presented itself, like there was, a geophysical crew had been working nearby. So, okay, well, let's go do that on NIV and that kind of thing. So it's been done sort of dribs and drabs over the years. But this year, when we go in, we'll be going in full on. And yeah, we'll have it all kind of teed up, but won't be generating results, in April, May, even June. We probably won't get on there until I would say mid-June, maybe late June. Get set up in a best case scenario, and then go hard at it.
What are you going to do in the meantime, though? I mean, after this spike in the share price, you got to keep the market engaged. Is there something else that you can do? I know you have other assets in the portfolio. Are you going to have any news flow in the meantime?
We're doing a little bit in the Highland Valley program. It's been fairly slow, as Stephen said, but I think informing folks and potential investors, about what we have there, I think would be one way we go about it. Some people know about it. I actually gave a couple of talks earlier this year at regional meetings, one up in Smithers and one in Kamloops, on the property. And we still have some more things to kind of put together and smooth that out a little bit more. But talking to some folks about it, going to meetings like Roundup and PDAC, and we'll be there. I don't know, whether we'll have displays or be given talks on that kind of thing. We could. Usually I give sort of more of a geological kind of a thing, so I focus on those regional meetings just to get it out there. And at those ones, we really just presenting it and saying, okay, we got this really great property, and these are the features of it that make us excited, and we're sort of soliciting interest at that point in time. So we can keep doing that, but we've got a partner, and now the interest we'd be soliciting is to get more investment in the company.
Yeah, Tony, if I could sort of just jump in there and add a little bit on two things you said. One, I want to talk about what are we going to be doing between now and the drill spinning. Well, really, it's doing what we're doing now. This is brand new. It's absolutely true that call it in the BC porphyry circles, this project was known because of Charlie and Alex, and they've owned it, they've had talks about it, and it's a small community, and so which actually spreads like wildfire when it puts it in the public domain. You get a lot of those people interested. I think what we need to do now is do exactly what we're doing: is educating the broader community, those that are not in that small ecosphere, and convince investors, our shareholders, prospective shareholders, why we. Charlie's team and our team, why we think this is the best untested copper gold moly porphyry target in British Columbia. Sure, that's a promotional statement, but that's what we see. The opportunity to pursue, and you asked about what do we expect in terms of tons, grade, size, etc. Well, I think I'd be speculating. I wouldn't want to say we expect 1 billion tons at 1%. That's just like that's not the expectation. Because it would be, there's only one way to find out, as Charlie had said. But what is very clear, and how I would approach this, is that it has to be competitive, right? So, how these things are evaluated. I mean, look, you have to speak the language of the majors, and what they do is they have a list of their top 10 projects in the jurisdictions they want, and then they go through them. And if you're not on the top three, you're not going to make this cycle. Particularly when you talk about BC porphyries, which are typically large, but and have corresponding capexes associated with them. So you can't build 10 of them in one cycle, and so you need to be the best, in my opinion. And that's what we're chasing here. I think that's what we have with American Eagle. I think American Eagle has the potential to be the best. Now, define the best. I mean, the best is very subjective, but really it has to be about does it come in? And again, to talk American Eagle, it comes close to surface. It's low lying, easy access, good topography. Goes to depth, it's large, and it's going to get bigger. That puts it in the discussion. Obviously, we need to quantify that in terms of tons, grade, etc. And then obviously extraction economics. When it comes to NIV, it's a bit of a different beast. But the geochem anomalies just can't be ignored. The tenor of them and the coalescence of them. And but look, without speculating on tons and grade, it has to be amongst, if not the best. That's what we want. And that's how you exit. Otherwise, you're in this for 20, 30 years. Mm-hmm. And that's not what we necessarily want.
Yeah.
I'll be 100.
Oh, are you actually 80?
No.
I was like,
going
okay.
with the 30. I'm getting close to 70 though.
I was going to be like, I was just quickly thinking of another knee joke, but then I thought, no, I've overdone that. Let's not talk about that.
No, that's okay.
We could talk about more about the other assets, though. I mean, Highland Valley. There's other stuff in merge too. Nickel, lithium. Why don't you spit them out, sell them, JV them, do something where you can get non-dilutive money for?
Yeah, when the time is right, you will. The Highland Valley is a really nice asset. That is going to be explored, developed, and ultimately traded. You can speculate on who you think may be buyers there. There's consolidation opportunities. We saw Getty, which is, call it a comparable company to us in terms of its land position and jurisdiction, but they're sort of in the northern rocks. We like, the southern rocks for a good reason. We won't get into that for now, but there is a consolidation opportunity there to sort of add some competitive tension to the process. So I really like Highland Valley. It's just been slow. But we will get there, especially with the lower cost of capital that NIV is inevitably going to bring to us. And then Manabridge, we're not going to spend a lot of money on Manabridge. We have the tenure for the foreseeable, like a decade at least, maybe longer. It's ours with not doing anything. I love nickel, not because I think nickel's going to rebound this year, it's because nobody loves nickel, and that just sort of gets my attention. Nickel is not going away as an important metal. It's just going through some difficult times as a result of what's going on in Indonesia. That will solve itself eventually. For environmental, geopolitical reasons, you name it. I don't know, but I just know that that's not going to go on forever. It's pretty ugly what they're doing out there from an environmental standpoint. But I do believe there is a legitimate market for nickel sulfide deposits, particularly on this continent. So I do have interest in advancing Manabridge when the time is right, and also acquiring other Manabridges, so to speak, by proxy, that are domiciled in other companies. I think what's going on at the Thompson, look at Valley. I don't think Valley is going to be in the Thompson for that much longer. So maybe I take a run at Vale's operations there. That would be interesting. But so things change in this industry pretty quickly. Metal Energy has, it owns the Highland Valley, it owns the Mana Bridge, and it has a claim to own 80% of the NIV. It's got wonderful assets. Nobody's been paying attention to it, largely because we've been working behind the scenes. But now it's out. And so that's our job for the next 6 months. Before you know it, PDAC is behind us. And then NIV is out there getting organized and start talking about its drill program. So these things happen quickly. And I hope, I can't make any promises. We answer any questions in year one. I certainly hope we do. That is on the table. We could get lucky, but we would get lucky if we answered it with the first drill hole. But we know exactly where we want to poke it, right? Charlie said, like, you're going to poke it in the heart of that anomaly. Like, it's just like, it's not rock. I mean, even I could say, okay, probably drill there. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to go out there with a robust program too, because I like to lower our unit costs. Probably, again, my instinct says we'll probably put 2 years worth of our contractual commitments in the first year to test this properly, and see where it gets us. Let's make a discovery.
So you're essentially asking for what, $5 million in 10 months before you can tell me if there's a porphyry there. I mean, is that fair to like really go back to, I suppose, first principles, or like dumb it down as much as possible? $5 million in 10 months before you can tell me if there's a porphyry there.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I can't answer that definitively, but I think it's a reasonable assumption to say we'd want to put $5 million in the project on year one. Yeah. I can't tell you. I can tell you what answers I want to deliver. But even if it wasn't successful after the first year, I don't think you can necessarily say today that anything is definitive. But look, we will have a lot more information after the end of 2026. That is certain. Hopefully, it's wonderful information.
Who's going to pay for all that? Do you think is it the open market and just equity financings, or do you think there's already
there is money? There's no shortage of money coming into Metal Energy looking to finance this operation. So we have had lots of interests from all three categories, all three financial categories, from retail to institutions and to majors. So that's a process that we juggle constantly in terms of managing the interest, managing our cost of capital, timing it well. We don't have a gun to our head today, right? I mean, we've got time. So again, right now we're not focused on the financing. We're focused on education. And I think that if we convey what Charlie sees in his mind to enough people, smart people, there's going to be an awful lot of interest in this project. And we already know that there is. So look, we could probably launch a financing tomorrow and close it in 2 weeks, and that would be that. But that's just it's not something we're contemplating today. But rest assured, that day is coming.
Where do you see G&A being over that period, over, call it, 2026?
It's a good question. I think at Ore Group we run, generally speaking, a pretty tight ship, and we like to. I'd like to do a look at our ratios in terms of G&A relative to money in the ground. I think the way this deal is structured, I mean, I just said we're looking to put $5 million into the ground. We generally speaking split our costs amongst, Joel's the CFO, but that's peanuts really. I mean, but let's just talk on a ratio basis. We put it into the ground. Our G&A is especially Metal Energy as of late. It's no point, just like you said, don't necessarily look at our financials. I'm not saying don't look at the financials, but that's not representative of going forward. Metal Energy has been sort of, battening down the hatches, but obviously that's going to change. We're going to get Charlie out there talking to investors, and that means doing the circuit, doing the shows, but ultimately Charlie's real value is his intellectual property and his ability to oversee, an efficient and effective drill program. And I can tell you, after dealing with many drill programs and dealing one with Charlie and his team over at American Eagle, they do run an efficient shop and they care. So like they watch the P's and Q's, as they say, and we get a lot of bang for our buck with Greg and company.
You said don't look at my financials. So the first thing I did was go and look up your financials here.
Of course.
You did about let's see, so that's there's accretion and then there's exploration to it. It was 320 to, so you did um what, about 50 grand a month in the first quarter of this year. Is that kind of, that's where it
Of
was? Where
what?
do you
Of
think?
G&A or of G&A?
Yeah,
Yes, sir. I mean, like that's ultra low, right? 50, like when
yeah,
so at that, on a year that's $600,000, that includes, all sorts. If you annualize that, that's audits, that's legals, it's, I wouldn't say, I'd say that's low. Let's just say, to operate a respectable junior mining company, which includes people, rent, salaries, promotion, travel, exchange fees, $1 million. Okay, let's just say $1 million. I'm just going to pull that out, but that's relatively an educated figure. So let's just budget $1 million in hard dollars spent for metal energy in 2026.
okay,
And maybe $5 million in exploration is what I'd like. But we haven't yet made those decisions yet.
right. Uh, Promotion and marketing. How are you going to do that? I think it's why I'm asking you that is because it is sensitive. I mean, it's not drilled yet, so you don't want to promote too much. You don't want to overpromise before it's actually been tested, but you do want to get some interest because you're going to have to finance it. How do you solve that puzzle? How are you going to promote metal energy?
Well, I think we're going to just tell the truth. I mean, we don't over promote, but I mean, you got to promote, right? I mean, I would say it would be disingenuous, if we didn't speak the way we feel. I think we do. You go back to the statement that the best untested copper gold porphyry in British Columbia. Sure, that's a promotional statement, but I wouldn't say it if I didn't really think it. And I think that does stem from all the data that we do have. Now, it may or may not, and one could say that is true, but there's only one way to find out. And I don't think if we drilled in industrial, it would be untrue. It is a wonderful target. And those are the bets that we make based on the science that we have. And you line it all up and you say, that needs to be drilled. And so, that's what we're doing. I think we'll continue to speak in those tones. We'll continue to say it is what it is. Nobody's here said it's going to be the biggest port. We don't know. Charlie said there's only one way to find out. I repeat, there's only one way to find out. We're going to drill this, but these are the bets we make based on 10 years worth of science. If we're right, we'll all make a lot of money and we'll deliver a mine to the market, which is really our objective. If we're wrong, and I think it would be unfair to say that we're wrong even after a quote unquote unsuccessful commercial 2026 is possible. I just don't think that we'd be prepared to say you're wrong. These things take time. This industry requires patience, and I know in a mark-to-market world, everybody's checking their portfolio and Simple on their phone. Everybody wants success yesterday. It doesn't work like that. It takes time, and it takes a lot of work, and it takes good people like us and like Charlie's team on the West Coast to bring these opportunities to market. So look, I have no problem promoting and getting out there and saying what we think. And, you're either in or you're out, but understand the risks. But look, we're all chasing big rewards here based on the commiserate risks that we do take.
Well, yeah, I'd like to jump in there too. There's a couple of things I like to say. We're trying to create value, but it isn't just value for us, right? It's value for the country, the province, the First Nations. They can all leverage that, and it isn't just with jobs. It's getting a piece of the action, just like the shareholders. Who put up the risk money, expect to get a piece of the action. They deserve to get a piece of the action and a good piece of it. But there's a lot of that can be shared around. And then the other thing is, there's a good analogy to this promo pitch, if you want, the best untested, yada, yada, yada. We did that earlier, and that was with GT. And this was something that Kevin Keogh, who was, is the president of Evergold, but he was the first president of GT. And, he's very good with grabbing onto those slogans. And And when we started rolling with GT, I said, this is the best untested gold geochemical anomaly I've ever seen. And I started as a soil sampler, so at one point in time I was plotting up individual gold numbers for individual soil samples that myself and my crew had collected up in the Yukon with Archer Cathode. Yeah, I could go on and on about that. Where you're plotting each number in pen and ink on Mylar for the maps. And hey, that looks like a good anomaly. So I knew what a good gold anomaly was. Kevin, heard me say that about this thing, and he said, "Oh, that's a great pitch to make." And that's the pitch we started with GT on our very first. I think it was at Roundup. We had the poster, best untested, and it generated a lot of interest. And what ended up happening was we discovered the Saddle South gold deposit. And, it was a very nice gold deposit in the very first, well, amongst the first drill holes, we hit some very good intercepts. But it didn't turn out to be huge. And the gold anomaly, the gold copper anomaly, that was a bit farther to the east and north. It was a northerly or an east-west trend that was to the north. So we called it Saddle North. And that was a saddle copper gold discovery, but they were not coincident there. The really good gold anomaly was over something different, but it was nearby. So, you don't know what it's going to turn out to be. And it turned out to be a porphyry thing, but initially it was a gold thing. And maybe this is going to be the other way around. You never know. And it might be a fabulous gold deposit. Who knows? And with a little bit of copper moly overprint or something, but they're right there side by each. So, hopefully it works out the same way. But again, you don't know what it is exactly when you start out and you make your pitch. You think it's this, and you talk about it, and away you go. And even with that, it was a roller coaster ride, and it didn't take that many years to sort out. We kind of went public, I think, late in 2016, and it was sold by 2020. But it was a roller coaster, and it still took 4 years and a lot of work.
Gentlemen, I know you almost have to go here, and I'm sure you'll be back for another conversation sometime soon, Charlie. What do you guys think is the most fair criticism of Metal Energy that you've heard so far after you announced the deal? And Stephen, I'll start with you.
Most fair criticism? Geez, I don't know. I haven't heard too much criticism. I'm sure there is. I ignore it anyways, and I just move forward with my life. But look, I think if I hear criticism, I've heard lots of criticism about Metal Energy, but it's been backward looking. It's been been fair complaints about us not delivering and underperforming. But again, that goes back to not lack of effort or not good intentions and good execution. It has to just do with Mother Nature and some unfortunate dynamics in the nickel market. I haven't heard too much criticisms about this. There's always critiques, but really, it's in one ear and out the other. I get critiqued all the time. I listen to it, but I don't let it get to me. I just move forward, and the objective here is very simple. We're going to finance ourselves well, do hopefully a very good financing, bring in very good shareholders, and answer the question: Is this a copper gold moly porphyry, or is it something else, or is it nothing? Time will tell.
Charlie, what about yourself? What's the most fair criticism you have of your?
Well, I think one of the things that we've kind of heard, when you look at a map, this looks like a little postage stamp. So we got 3 tenures, from the northwest tip to the southeast tip. It's a good 4 kilometers long. It's plenty big enough to host a copper gold porphyry system, or even more than one. It's not that much smaller a land position than NAC. And people criticize that. And yet, we've got a number. It looks like a number of porphyry centers on NAC, and they're still well within the claim boundary. So, that's one of the things I've heard. We're surrounded by Northwest Copper's East Nev property, but we're still plenty large enough to hold the greatest of it. And, hopefully they'll have something, nearby too. But yeah, that's one thing I've heard.
What's the most fair criticism you guys have of me? What do you think what do you wish I would have asked for, or what do you think I should have done differently?
Well, I don't think anything, Antonio, actually. I was very impressed with the videos I've seen that you've done. We don't have the scenery maybe, but you just got us. But no, I think you've been very thorough, to be honest.
I don't want to put you on the podcast barbecue, Antonio. It's the CEO barbecue.
Exactly. Someone should start that podcast barbecue for publicly listed podcasts. Maybe that's going to be a thing one day as well. Thank you so much, though, for doing this. Really appreciate your time. For people listening and watching, I'm sure I am forgetting stuff, and there are things that I should have asked. Please let me know. Send me an email, put it in the comments below, whatever. I'll ask it next time. Make sure that. Yeah, thank you so much for doing this, and hopefully speak to you again soon.
Thanks, Antonio.
Yeah. Thanks, Antonio.
And as always, thanks to everyone for watching Resource Talks. I have a couple of more things to say, though. The fact that this company was interviewed here today does not mean that they're necessarily a good or a bad company. I'm not here to endorse nor attack anyone. I am simply here to ask some questions. If you find that I have failed in asking a question that you would have liked to hear an answer to, which will happen as I'm not an experienced interviewer, please let me know, and I will try to correct that mistake in a future interview. As mentioned at the beginning, please understand that mineral exploration and development is an extremely risky business. Losing money is the norm and should be the expectation. This is a very complex sector, and the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving particles, including company-specific factors like geology, financing ability, and many others, really, as well as particles that are outside of the company's control, like geopolitics, macroeconomics, commodity prices, and many more, most of which are nearly impossible to fully understand. Moreover, these companies that typically get interviewed on Resource Talks are in the pre-revenue stage, which means they rely on the public markets for the financing of their operations, which could result in shareholder dilution. Furthermore, as a general rule of thumb, you'll be better off understanding that all company communications online, albeit this interview or their website and their presentation and their social media accounts, or even the social media accounts which you thought were your friends and then told you about a stock, everything really that these companies do is intended as marketing. And although I do not make buy or sell recommendations because there is a clear conflict of interest given the nature of my business, many out there do. And you should be aware of that inherent bias, and you should be careful out there. That bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed with everyone out there. So it is safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company-specific content to approach it with a dose of skepticism and assume that the party telling you about it is biased in at least some shape or form, because there will always be a bias. Again, albeit clear or not. So always ask yourself what the incentive of your counterparty is and never rely on them regardless of their incentives, but instead double check if what they're saying is true, again, by using setterplus.ca. The fact that I have no idea what I'm doing should already be clear to you at this point. I am not saying this to make jokes or laugh with myself. I just simply do not have a long enough track record of consistent investment profits. So I should under no circumstances be considered an authority on anything. Again, although this may sound amusing to you, believe me, it is not amusing, and it is not intended as a joke. I'm simply pointing out a fact and warning you not to rely on anything I do or say. Unfortunately, at least to my understanding, nobody out there has any special abilities. The CEOs do not possess any superior knowledge, and they cannot know about what will go up, what will go down, or what will go in circles. Some people even believe that to be rule number one on Wall Street. Nobody really knows. None of us know whether any of the company's activities will result in a success, again, given that we're talking about high-risk activities where most of the times it ends in failure. So unfortunately, try as I may, I won't always catch all red flags or all challenges with the companies. So even if I did ask a few tough questions in here, don't rely on this being all of the tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving parts, and I am conflicted given the nature of this business. Therefore, I cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video, and you cannot hold me responsible for any losses or damages stemming from the way you decide to use this interview. Viewers, listeners, and readers acknowledge and agree that the information presented herein did not constitute a solicitation or an offer to buy or sell any security or investment or to participate in any trading strategy. Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business strictly disclaim any and all liability for losses and or damages, whether direct, indirect, special, or consequential, or other consequences, however so caused, arising out of any use or reproduction of the content published by Resource Talks, or any decision made or action taken in reliance upon it. By consuming this content, all consumers vow to release Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business from all claims, proceedings, or consequences. This is all to say, I know it's a lot of lawyer talk, but this is all to say that you shouldn't blindly trust me or anybody on the internet, and you should do your own research. Once again, social media is meant for entertainment. It is setterplus.ca where you do your research. That's where you'll find the company's official filings, and I encourage you to read and analyze the Management Information Circular, the financial statements, the Management Discussion and Analysis, and whenever available, the NI 43-101 technical documents. If you don't understand everything in those documents, the chances of you losing money are even higher than they normally are in this space. And as mentioned earlier, the chances of even the best analysts in this sector losing money are extremely high, since this is venture capital and it is not for everybody. I'll leave you with one of Charlie Munger's quotes, which I wish I had listened to more often earlier on, which says, quote, "If you don't understand it, don't do it."